Hi, everyone. Welcome back to another episode of Brown People Problems, a podcast where I, your host, Nikita, sit down with guests from around the world to chat about what it's like navigating life as a brown person. And today we're chatting about Desi wedding culture and the mentality that goes with that. And I'm so excited to talk about this today. And I have with me Supriya. Supriya is a creative designer and founder at Design Mantraa, which was established in 2009 and is a boutique style event design service that specializes in South Asian wedding decor based in the Greater Toronto area. I had the pleasure of working with Supriya a few years ago, and she was great in just someone to talk to as well outside of the services that she was offering. And I'm really excited to talk to you today about all of this and the wedding culture and the Desi mentality around all of this. So welcome, Supriya.
Thank you so much, Nikita, for a great introduction. Really appreciate it.
Yeah, of course. I'm so happy to have you here, and I was glad to hear from you when you were agreeable to having this conversation.
This is like my second nature. I run my own podcast as well, not in the wedding industry or the creative space, but in other interests of mine. So happy to be here.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay, so we'll also link your podcast down below. So yeah, of course. Yeah, we're gonna have all of Supriya's details down below. But gosh, tell us a little bit about yourself, Supriya, your business, what got you to get started in the wedding industry, and just like how was all of this born for you?
Yeah, great question. So I got married in 2008. It sounds really ancient now, but this year we will be celebrating our 15th anniversary. And when I got married, I was really inspired with the design aspect of it. And at that time, there were not a lot of vendors providing the design decor services. So in 2009, I decided to start this part-time because I was also working in finance. I'm a CPA by profession, so I was working in finance, corporate, full time. And this was kind of my creative outlet. And, I would buy some silk floral samples from Michael's and Walmart. At that time, there was no Amazon, so you couldn't buy anything online. And I had no idea where the wholesalers were. So anyhow, over the years, I explored the market a little bit more, got to understand how things work. And slowly but surely, I started building a team of my own, where we were doing 3, 4 events, gradually outgrown ourselves. In 2016 is when I decided to take the venture full time and explore the option of being a full-time entrepreneur while I was also a new mom. And that's where I see that a lot of things shift for women specifically, that they're not unable to, it becomes really tedious to have a full-time 9 to 5 along with young kids. So this was a great opportunity for me to create that flexibility, to work with that flexibility, and being creative a little bit more and work around my kids' schedule rather than a corporate 9 to 9. Once I started the business, that's when I realized, oh my God, this is not actually based on few hours here and there based on one. It's actually 24/7 kind of cycle in a business, right? Like you're constantly working, especially when you're taking a thing from part-time to full-time. You want to do more events, you have to grow your team, you have to source a warehouse and storage that way. So there are different bigger problems when you're it comes with its own growing pains. So that was the backstory of how we took full-time in 2016. We really outgrew ourselves again. It was a steady growth happening over the next 4 or 5 years. And then unfortunately, we were hit with COVID in 2020, right? So for 1 year, there were literally events happening, but at a very small scale. And the expectations were still there, but at the same time, we were still maneuvering with regulations, how everything was changing so quickly. We had to be within the regulations, and creating the whole thing from scratch in people's backyard. came with a different level of problems in itself. Now you have to source tents, you have to make sure that the grounds are, equal, because they're not even most times, right? So there were different problems that we were dealing with. Now you have to source tables, furniture, whereas at a regular venue, all these basic things are provided, right? So the workload was much more, although the budgets were shrinked, because instead of a 300 people guest count, now you were only working towards a 25 to 30 people gathering, right? So that happened, and in 2021, I decided that Ontario is being way too strict with the regulations, so I need to come up with something else. And that's when I personally, I'd already built a team, so team was doing great in terms of the execution part of things. I was more involved with customer, like the business development aspect of the business, and client interaction, coming up with the designs, just things that I'm actually good at, my strong points are. Whereas my team would kind of take over from there, and the execution, logistics, behind the scenes, transportation, and everything was being done by my team. I would still be there on the day of production, but at least my time was being now focused on delivering for the client's experience overall. So in 2021, we took that route where the team was completely dedicated in terms of execution, and I was slowly involved with the business development, partnerships with other planners, venues, photographers, and stuff like that, and focusing on that client experience. So since then, we've been taking minimal amount of clients per year. We average about anywhere around 24, 25 events a year. But that keeps us sane during the season. We've gone through years where, we were doing like 80 to 90 events in a year during that 6-month time period, and it was really stressful. So we've reached a point where our clients typically have a bigger budget dedicated for design and decor, and they are paying for the service at the end of the day, and they appreciate what they're getting at the end of the day.
Yeah, absolutely. Gosh, I was having flashbacks to when you were talking about the ground being even for the tent. I was definitely having like little flashbacks. And for those who are listening who are maybe from different parts of the world, I have some listeners from like Germany and Kuwait, so hello if you're listening. But if you don't already know, like the brown wedding industry is on like steroids in Canada. I don't know about like different parts of the States, what it's like there, but in Canada, it's just something on a totally different level. I'm waiting for the day we're gonna get our own reality TV show, just like Desi weddings, and just like, that's gonna be hilarious. But it's a totally different show that you have to put on, comes with so much pressure to just like execute and outdo one another. And it's a full season, like you said. It's not just like a wedding here, a wedding there. It's like a rigorous summer, spring to fall season every year. And I was thinking about my own event as you were talking about this, because I remember that tent ground not being even was such an issue for us. But I think you're absolutely right that vendors have really had to pivot with COVID and continue to now find like this new way of kind of working, right, post-COVID too, where people I think have like a lot more flexibility around when they want to get married and how they want to get married. And I think from what I have seen in my circles, I think people are now even okay with smaller weddings or simpler weddings. So I think there is like a shift that's happening.
Yeah, and we'll talk about it a little bit more as we have the discussion, but I've definitely seen the shift happening. Like clients come to me, they don't want to spend like 150K just on the decor, where there are big Bollywood kind of stages being set up, right? The kind of clients that I attract are somebody who wants something beautiful, but something simple and sophisticated at the same time, something classy, right?
Yeah.
So even if they look at the pictures, 20 years down the road, they wouldn't be like, oh my God, what the heck was I thinking? Like, what is this? Right. So, and I feel like people are definitely, getting attracted a little bit more to simpler, less headcount, 100, 120 people, like a cozy kind of setting, maybe at a vineyard or like a cute little inn, with maybe fresh florals or something that's pretty, and they're emphasizing more on the overall experience versus having like 1,000 people reception. So that's the kind of market that at least we are attracting as a company.
Yeah. And we have 1,000 people brown weddings in Toronto. We have them in BC. We have, for those listening who are maybe like not familiar, like people are averaging on the lower end, like $100K that they're spending, $100,000 easily on the lower end on their weddings. So it's a really hot industry to be in. But I think there's just something about it where it just feels really competitive, right? I don't know. I don't think anybody or most people, don't wake up and kind of decide, okay, well, I want to spend 6 figures on a wedding because that's something that I, in my heart, want. But sometimes it feels like this competition that, okay, I want to do better than that person, or that person did something that I was really inspired by, and I want that big, grand, wedding. You're seeing people do like entrances and helicopters, and I don't know if you saw this guy who like skydove into his barat. He like jumped out of a plane and he like just like dove into his barat. So I think it's just things are just really going over the top, and that's something that I was really thinking about, just the pressures that come with that, pressures to execute, because wedding planning is already difficult, right? You need to find some sort of a consensus between you and your partner. And then with most like South Asian families, you need to find consensus with your family and your partner's family. It's already like 15 people in the mix that you need to please. And then now you have to also please the larger community, right? Like, what will people say? What will this second cousin, like, what are they going to say if we don't involve them in this? And being on your end, what are some of the pressures that you've seen couples like going through as they're planning their weddings?
Yeah, I think it's too much social media, too many ideas. So 1 month, if their wedding is say 6 months down the road, in March, they're inspired by something. In April, oh my God, now this has come up. So that decision making between themselves, first of all, as a couple, is challenging. And also, quite honestly, during COVID, the cost of supplies has gone really high. As a vendor, I know that. Where, if we were paying, say, for example, $5 a tape that's used as a supply, the same thing is being costed at $12, $13. Sometimes it's not even available, right? So we have to come up with alternatives that way. So I would say that financial pressure is one of the biggest things. The decision making is another, because you're constantly being open to, those new ideas being thrown at you. And sometimes the delivery is also not possible. Like, for example, in India, like, there's a different level of execution when it comes to design, right? The labor is so cheap, so it's okay for them to create those big kind of setups, and it's mainly outdoors. You can't replicate that kind of thing here with the same budget in mind, right? Like, you can do it, but it's going to cost you thousands and thousands of dollars, right? So I find that unreasonable expectations are there quite a bit. That Pinterest and Instagram, you find those inspirations, but I have to bring them at the ground level. That, okay, we'll use them as inspirations, but if your budget is 15,000, it's not only 15,000, it's a decent budget, but something like this, it's gonna cost you more, like $60,000, $75,000. Are you okay with that? right? We can get it done. And then they're like, no, that's not what we want. Maybe we can take some elements from it and then kind of incorporate it for our day. That's a reasonable discussion to have. So I think being bombarded with too many ideas and that competitive feeling that, oh, my cousin did this, my friend did that, I cannot use those ideas. Why not? Like, bring your flavor to it, right? Like, bring your aspect, bring your style to it, bring your sassiness to it, and it can absolutely be yours. So I think that confusion and that stress of competition is sometimes there, but I think it's also changing, like, and it's also in different traditions. Say, for example, I see that a lot in North Indian clientele, whereas my South Indian clientele is super simple. They're extremely simple in the sense, okay, yeah, we like this. This is our budget. How can we make it happen? These are some of the colors that inspire us, and we trust your vision. Just let us know. And also, some fusion weddings are a little bit more flexible as well, where one party could be say from a South Asian descent, the other one is perhaps Canadian or something like that. They're already awestruck with just the colors that we will be using. That they don't care much about anything else that's going on. So I wouldn't just staple it by saying that it's the whole South Asian culture, but I feel like more North Indian culture is like that better. And even when you go into India and see those weddings, there's one better than the other, and there's always outdoing new things, and like, absolutely, it's like whose wedding was better and the talk of the town and stuff like that, right? So I think it just depends, and I think things are changing. Like, I think people are kind of going away from that 500, 600. They're more they're even open for destination weddings where they know that not more than 100 people will come, and that's what they want. And to be quite honest, even parents are okay with that. Maybe not parents of our generation, but perhaps in the next 7 to 10 years, the kids who will be getting married are more of that thought that, why do you need to spend that much money on a wedding? Let's book an island or a resort, have like 100 people, 50 people come in, and we'll give you that money for down payment towards your house. Which makes more logical sense to me, because that house is going to be your asset. And maybe from the finance background or the other industry that I serve as a mortgage advisor in the real estate, it's like, I don't get like why you're spending 150,000, 250,000 on.
Oh my gosh. Yeah. I think that you're right. Obviously, there's a lot of variability, right? In like, there's so many subgroups in the larger South Asian culture, so we don't want to make any like general statements. But I think, in that North Indian community, there's a lot of wanting to be like over the top, right? Like over the top weddings. I don't know, like everything, like designer clothes. And just it just feels too much, right? I think, like, at what point do you kind of draw the line? I think, sure, it's one thing if you have that type of disposable income, but I think most people, like most middle class people in the GTA, like, you don't have that type of disposable income. I think I was speaking to someone a few years ago, and they said they were still paying for their wedding 5 years after their wedding. They had taken a huge line of credit and they were still paying for the wedding.
And see, that's one of my pet peeves, is understand your budget. Like, understand what you're comfortable with. Like, would you want to pay for a wedding 5 years after the wedding? I think that's, the priorities need to be set correctly, right? And if you're spending just from the thought of competition that I need to outdo, or, I want to have a fancy thing, I'm just not, I wouldn't buy into that in this time and age, because I think your marriage is more important than your wedding day. So you've got to be focusing more on your relationship if you can afford, like if your disposable income, like you said, is crazy, and yeah, you have, 350, 500K just sitting and doing nothing, or that's the income that you have decided that, yes, this will be our lavish money, and this is, we will be investing that towards the wedding day. Sure, go ahead. There's nothing wrong with it. People do that all the time. But if you are making 100K as a couple, even 200K as a couple, and you're spending like 50,000, 200,000, it just doesn't make sense. Like, you need to fix your priorities.
Yeah, that's a lot of money. And yeah, I think there's just this larger focus on the wedding week, right? And I don't know if many couples are talking about and doing some prep work for the marriage. It's just the wedding week, right, that they're focused on, and the parties. And as, I don't know, you see couples navigate this because you're so good at supporting people even outside of their design needs. Do you see people struggling a lot, like in terms of like their mental health when it comes to wedding and their stress levels?
Yeah, I've seen a lot of couples not being able to manage the discussions, I guess. So it really impacts their relationship at the end of the day, right? So I think it definitely helps them getting a glimpse of what the marriage is going to be like if they're not able to communicate as adults, per se. One discussion can actually get into an argument very easily. So I come in as not a counselor, but more like, okay, time to make a decision. Here are your options. So based on what's important for you, prioritize, like, here's a reality check. It's just one day. It's not your life. So make decisions accordingly, right? And yeah, it is very stressful. Like, brides often call me that, my mother is driving me crazy, or my mother-in-law is driving me crazy. They're not even paying for the wedding, but they're giving all sorts of inputs that I don't like. I don't want to go with it. How do I handle that? Right. So we talk about it. Like, there are different ways to deal with it. From my own experience, obviously, running the business and seeing different couples and stuff like that. So I share with them that what could possibly work for you, or, share different resources in some scenarios, right? So I think it's like you said, there's so much pressure on that one day, that what will my friends say, or my in-laws say, or my chachi, tai, whoever will say, that it does drain you so much, because it's not just one decision. There are like million small decisions that are dependent on you, essentially, right? And when you feel obligated to make those decisions, and you're not a kind of person who likes to take decisions or doesn't like that control, it can definitely drive you insane.
Yeah. Or if you're the kind of person who really likes control, then to have
giving you so much, insights when it's not needed, then it can drive you crazy that way as well, right?
Yeah.
So
100%.
Yeah. So yeah, it definitely would drive you crazy. I mean, I always recommend brides to take Tylenol with you on the wedding. Keep a Tylenol with you on the day off or during the week, because you probably need it.
Yeah. Oh man. Yeah. I remember when I got married during COVID, and we had to move our wedding like twice. But for me, the biggest worry, and I think that was for a lot of people getting married at that time, was just what's going to happen with COVID, right? My biggest worry was someone is going to catch COVID, and then half of my people are not going to be able to make it. And I think that obviously had its own kind of like mental health implications for so many of us. But just in general, even under the best of circumstances, there's just so much to think about. Everyone's giving their opinion, especially if I think you're like, I don't know, the first daughter in the family to get married, or the first son to get married in the family. There's a lot of expectations.
Or the last one.
Oh my gosh, I didn't think about that.
Can you imagine? The last one in the house. What are they gonna do?
We have to kind of like live all of our unfinished dreams through the
All the
last one.
dogs are flying from all over the world
Yeah.
and whatnot.
Oh man.
That would be the pressure. Yeah, the first and the last one, I
The
think.
first and the last, yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
Everyone in the middle is like, yeah, whatever. We still have.
Yeah, it can be trial and error.
Yeah.
Yeah. What do you think? What do you think it is about this larger like South Asian culture that demands so much extravagance? Like, what is it about us and our communities?
I think it goes back to history where, all these Raja Maharajas used to have like big, lavish affairs, right? So it's just rooted in our culture. Like, can't really pinpoint where it kind of came from, but historically, even if you look at the outfits and different kingdoms, they had their own richness. And if there's one event happening, there are like million different kind of food varieties coming for them, right? So I think it's just ingrained in our culture, and I really appreciate it because comparing it to, not putting any other culture down, but I think this is the difference between our exuberance and our variety that you can actually get. But what I believe is that stay within your means. Like, chadar allow jitni hai. Otherwise, you go outside your means, that's where the trouble is. Right? Like, you can still be creative and create that experience for your guests by still being within a reasonable budget. Like, you don't have to be crazy, overspend things, right? So I think it's just traditionally, culturally, historically, how rich the heritage of Indian subcontinent has been, that it has been carried through in a lot of areas.
Yeah, I think that's a really good point. It's something that's so like intergenerational. And then, I think we're so community focused too. So the pressure and the cost already go up when you think about like that collectivist perspective. Okay, we got to invite this person and this person, this person, and you're inclusive of, everybody. But then there's like that downside there too, that adds like a lot of pressure as well to please everyone.
100%. That's why I think destination weddings are the best.
Yeah.
Join us. I mean, not everybody can join, obviously, but it keeps the count limited. And, or what I've also seen is that people have intimate weddings and then they'll have receptions with their friends at a bar or something like that, they'll rent a bar. And they would have nice music, nice wine, nice drinks, finger foods and whatnot, and they call that a reception, which is a great idea as well. Right? Like, you don't have to have like a full-blown, like, have a lunch Indian ceremony. It's not going to cost you the same as a reception, because there'll be booze at the reception. The cost per plate definitely goes much more than the lunch hour. So maybe be creative and divide and conquer that way.
Be within your means, because I think it's really hard to do, because there's just so much people pleasing that we feel like we need to do.
And it quite honestly depends on the families. Like, I remember in 2008 when I got married, my dad wanted to invite more people, from his work and this and that. But when we sat down and had discussions, we invited them, but some of the guests were invited only for ceremony, some were invited only for reception. So instead of like having 300 people for ceremony and 300 people for reception, it was more like, okay, it's going to be morning Friday, ceremony, and we'll tap it at 140, 150 guests. And there are some close relatives who are going to come for the reception as well. But for the ones that are not needed, like his co-workers don't need to be at the reception. They can join us for the ceremony. right? So I think it really depends on the parents as well, your families too. That, you know, my in-laws and my parents were pretty appreciative of it, and like, yeah, that's fine, like, you know, it saves us money, so who cares?
Yeah. Yeah.
So yeah, I mean, they did invite who they wanted to at the end of the day, but it didn't have to be for both the events. It could just be, you know, maybe 2 events out of 3 or 4 events that we were having.
Yeah. Yeah. Split them up, divvy it
Yeah,
up, right?
exactly.
That's,
Yeah. And
yeah.
it's also fun that way. I find that you're actually able to interact with
Oh, yeah.
people, right? Like if there were 300, 400 people on my reception, I don't think I would have been able to interact with everybody. Whereas when I had 125 people and it was seated dinner in a tent at a beautiful restaurant out in Caledon, I was able to have that interaction, at least say hello to, you know, whoever came. So, yeah, I mean, there are lots of ways to be creative. The key is that, yes, you want to celebrate with people, but again, like, don't stretch yourself. Like yours, whoever you were speaking with, who were still paying that line of credit in today's interest, which is close to 7%. It's crazy. I rather put that money and time towards creating my life, the freedom and flexibility that I eventually want. Because once you have gone through the wedding, the day is over. After 2, 3, 5 years, the reality will hit you. Right? Oh my God, I haven't been able to buy a house in this market. Or if I'm able to buy now, I have kids and I don't want to work full time, or I want to work like those few hours or start a side hustle. But if you have those financial commitments, those obligations, what is that getting you to, right? Like you lose your freedom just for one day or that week, just to impress people. I don't think that's fun.
Yeah, I think that perspective is really important because there's, again, right, that pressure to please everyone. And so if it's not your parents and it's a larger community and, you know, the cousins and like you said, the aunts, the uncles, everybody. And I think that's something that I've seen people in my life also really struggle with, is feeling really caught in between of these opposing, I think, demands from both sides, and then feeling this need to please everyone. And that creates so much stress that everyone's got to be happy. And I think that's really hard.
Here's the thing. I think the expectation should be that I can't make everyone happy. You just can't. There will be some auntie or masar or chachi who will be pissed regardless of, no matter how good of an intention you had to please them, to make sure that they're taken care of. But you will offend somebody. It's just not possible to keep, you know, everybody happy. I think that expectation from yourself should just be tossed into the toilet from day one. The expectation should be, I cannot keep everybody happy, but who are those handful of people that I want to make sure that are taken care of? So if you lower your expectations, I think you'll be less stressed that way.
Yeah. Who's like my inner circle that I want to make happy.
Yes. Who do you want to be there with you and you can't let them go, or, you know, however you want to define it. I think that having that perspective is really important. Having that expectation is really important.
And I think having the privilege of being supported in that decision by everyone else, because now imagine voicing that decision to your parents or your in-laws to be, and then hearing that no, that's not gonna fly. You know, we kind of have to do our best by everyone. And so I think if you have the right support around you, because the whole wedding planning process can very easily just feel like this is something that's happening to me and this is outside of my control, and I'm just being tossed, you know, from like one side to the other, to the other, to the other. And when I talk to so many people, they're just looking forward to like being on the other side of it. They just want to get it over with. And that's not a good mentality going into
sad feeling, right? Like that's a very sad feeling. So I would suggest that you take this as running a business, I guess, if you want to put it this way. Delegate some people, so say for example, your dad's side, ask your dad that you will be in communication with them, and here are some things that, you know, you want to make sure that Chachaji is happy. Okay, so you make sure that he's happy, or whatever. It can come on you, basically, the bride or the groom, because you're already dealing with so many things. Like you both are the CEO, board members, whatever you want to call, and leverage your parents or your siblings of who's good with who. I always find that, you know, somebody connects a little bit better with few other family members in the family. So delegate, you know, their communication is a little bit better. And then assign dealing with those relationships with that particular person that you can trust, right? So I don't think that you need to, like, you don't intentionally offend anybody, obviously, and you try your best. But the way you can try your best is by assigning some people that, okay, you'll take care of these 10 people, you'll take care of these 10 people, you'll take care of these 10 people, because you cannot be running around making sure that everybody's happy at the end of the day.
Yeah, I think those boundaries are important. And I think even like just boundaries with yourself. Not letting it just consume you 24/7, right? Thinking about, all right, you know, I spent 3 hours on this today. What else is there right now to my life that I can do to keep engaging in life and enjoying with life? Because wedding planning, meeting all these expectations, keeping up with all these pressures, demands, like it can really just hijack your life for like that year before your wedding. Right. And then all of a sudden this wedding is done, and now you're kind of sitting there with all this free time and thinking, okay, well, wow, like what do I do with my life now?
You start a podcast.
You start a podcast. I think this is it's hard, and I think it's hard to maintain those boundaries and that balance. So, you know, I think therapy is a really great place to just go talk and I think manage your stressors. Surrounding yourself with the right people is really important. Creating boundaries when you can with others and also with yourself is really important. Really hard to do. really hard to do. But
I think you need frequent breaks from planning or any big project, if you think about it that way. Once you relax, you come out of it, you can get back to it with different kind of energy, because if you're constantly rubbed against it, you would just attune from it. Like it would just get too much into you that you're not enjoying after a certain time, whereas it shouldn't be that way, in my opinion.
I think it can also maybe be helpful to reflect on what is your sort of overarching, you know, like goal for this process. Is this about making others happy for you? Is this about maybe like you want to maintain some peace in your family? Maybe your elder sibling, you know, eloped, and so now you have all this pressure to do that like big fat Indian wedding. So I think maybe it can be helpful to just reflect on, okay, like what is this about for me? Right? What is this process like gonna do for me? What are like top 5 values that I have in this process? Because you can just get so swarmed with everything else that needs to be done, so you tend to lose your focus. Right? But if you kind of go in with a focused value system, that, you know what, my values for this wedding are fun and authenticity and togetherness. That's it. Like you already have 3 things that you can set everything else around. Absolutely. So it doesn't really matter if, you know, how many snack items you have on like your buffet, right? I think realign yourself to what your values are for the process.
And that I think both bride and groom need to do
100%.
Individually first, right? And then decide as a couple. Because your priorities might be completely different, or your values might be completely different than what your partner is thinking. And then you have to come up on the same page as the partner and see what's that middle ground. It's not easy. It's a very challenging task, but ultimately, you know, what I believe in is a wedding is just one day or 1 week. It's really stepping into that marriage, that relationship that couples should be focusing on.
So really realigning, that's what I'm hearing you say, is really realigning with like, what does this week mean for you? Yes, there's a lot of competition. Yes, you know, your cousin did this huge, like, big fat Indian wedding. And maybe that's something that they genuinely wanted, and that's okay. But what is this about for you? Because we're really competitive people. And there's already so much competition, you know, around outperforming one another. And we bring that even to our weddings. And if that's what this is about for you, then that's what this is about for you, right? But I think it's about being honest with yourself too. Like, what do I need from this? What is this process going to do for me?
Yeah.
What am I hoping it's going to bring me?
Yes.
That type of, I think, reflection is so necessary, because otherwise you're just going to get sucked into this vortex of performing. And I really blame Bollywood for this.
No, just Karan Johar, not just
Yeah, oh my gosh. Yeah.
just
Yeah.
Karan.
Yeah, it's awful. I think I had all these extravagant ideas, and then I saw the bill for everything, and I was like, all right, let's just shave half of this off. Yeah. Like, oh, you know what? Yeah, like this doesn't matter. Let's just shave it off. It's okay.
Yeah, I can live without this.
Yeah. I think it's hard, and I think, you know, even like the things that you and I are talking about, it requires like a lot of self-reflection, and I don't know how many people have like the privilege to engage in that, right? Like, I think maybe like as a larger cultural group, like a lot of us were kind of just like living in survival mode. You're kind of, you know, work home, family drama. Like, you don't have space, you don't have friendships, or like maybe like a therapy relationship to kind of really think about this stuff. You're just going with the flow and getting to the other side of all of these milestones.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. I mean, there is no manual that comes, unfortunately, right?
I feel like you should write one. You should write a manual. Yeah, that would be really cool. Yeah.
Project.
Yeah.
Another project, sure.
Yeah.
But yeah, there is no manual. It depends upon everybody's experience of how their families have done things a certain way. It depends upon what kind of environment they are in currently. You know, so there are too many variables, and therapy, coaching / maybe some groups of, you know, newbies who are getting married in next 6, 8, 12 months. Maybe we can have like a WhatsApp group that, oh, this is the challenge I'm facing, what did you do? Or a Facebook group or some kind of community where they can bitch and complain and possibly find solutions together, right? I think it's not easy, but at the same time, you need to consider this as fun. If you think of this as fun and you're going in with, you know, this is gonna happen hopefully once in your lifetime kind of experience, and envision how you want it to be, have that clarity around it, then chances of actually getting it will be much easier, because a lot of times we don't even know what the heck we want. That's where I think in life in general, you just settle with whatever is thrown at you. If you don't know how you visualize, how you want your wedding day to be, how you want your guest or your close ones to feel like, where you imagine to get married, like if those things are not clear, if you don't think about it, if you don't put conscious effort towards researching and maybe create visual or vision board or something like that, chances are it won't come clear, because you know you will be sucked into other people's expectations and other people's visions and definition of how a wedding should be. So I think it just starts from you having clarity and whatever inspires. Like, it could be a Karan Johar film that inspires you, and that's totally fine. There's nothing wrong with it. You need to have that clarity first before, and I think if you have that, it's easier for you to kind of maneuver those bumps that you'll face many times during the journey.
Okay, a new business idea. We're gonna co-write this manual on how to survive brown weddings for people getting married. You're
Yeah.
gonna bring a lot of the strategy. I'm gonna bring the mental health and the psycho ed piece. And I think it's gonna do really well. And we're gonna turn it into a support group. Okay.
There you
So
go. Okay,
yeah.
let's do that.
If anyone listening would like this, let us know because I think we need this. We need this. Because someone as being in this like field, in the mental health field, and I'm a therapist, and I struggled a lot in that week, not week, sorry, the year before my wedding. Like there was like stress levels were at all-time high. I think me and my partner kind of fought the most that we have at that time. And that's us like with I think slightly above average communication skills, right? I think this me kind of bringing all of my couples therapy skills with my partner and really doing my best. And I think we still struggle because we're like stepping on our toes a little bit. So I think it's like really important that you invest in your mental health in that time frame. You invest in your relationship health as well, because I hear people in my personal life tell me that they're, fighting a lot in that year, and they've like reconsidered getting married to that person, and they've just felt like their relationship has deteriorated.
Yeah.
Right. And that's not the point, right, of any of this. Like it shouldn't lead to that. That's the time to actually strengthen your relationship.
Yes, but a lot of times it does lead into challenging time because again, not just your expectations, but your own family's expectations and his or her family's expectations and extended family expectations, right? So
Yeah.
I think that project sounds really fun. I think people really need it.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, so let us know if anybody wants that. I think that'd be pretty cool. But I think this is a really interesting topic, and I really appreciate you coming on. And for all of our listeners, if you really enjoyed this conversation, let us know like your thoughts. I'll be putting down a couple polls. If you're listening on Spotify, I'll put down a couple polls for you to kind of answer, and always taking in like new questions and topics that you want to listen to. But go check out Supriya. I will link all of her links down below. And if you want us to do a part 2 of this, if you want us to talk about some very specific wedding related challenges, navigating those, let us know. We'll definitely take those into consideration.
Yeah, we can definitely do a Q&A kind of session as well. And yeah, open to ideas for sure.
Yeah. Well, thanks so much for joining me today. I know we can keep going on and on and on about this, and I have so much to say, but thanks. Yeah, thanks so much for making time for this, Supriya.
100%. I absolutely loved having the conversation. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, of course. All right, everyone, check out the links down below and stay tuned for our disclaimer. The guest and the host of Brown People Problems do not offer individualized therapeutic or medical advice, and our conversations should not be interpreted as such. This podcast is not a replacement for therapy. This podcast exists for educational purposes only. Please consider your circumstances and engage with the content mindfully.